Good evening, everyone. Time for another silver update. Now, this is the 1-minute chart of silver provided by netdania.com. You can click on the link below. You can see that as we opened up this Sunday evening, we had a nice little blast off there. Actually getting to, if we come close in here, we can see we just got almost 18, you can see. 17.998, and right there's where they capped it. You can see they came in with some selling volume. There was nothing but buyers until they came and capped it. Then you can see they came in here, hit it really hard, big volume, lots of fake paper silver to bring the price back down. So doesn't look like they were ready to let it run through 18 on the after hours. Now I've been pointing out that 19 is going to be the big important level because that's where all the overhead resistance sitting up here is. So we could have easily just run straight up to that if they wouldn't have capped it. But I still think that we're probably going to continue higher next week. I think this is just a little setback, and they probably want it to be a controlled rise. So let's get over to this speech by Christine Lagarde. And this is going to be some interesting stuff here. This is kind of a mirror image of the one that she gave in 2014. If you remember, in 2014, I covered that one. Had all the numerology and the symbolism. Well, this one does so as well. But this one is going to be the Rosetta Stone and the Rosetta Stone spacecraft, EU spacecraft, and the Philae lander. So let's look and see what Christine Lagarde says. I'm going to summarize basically what she said. It's really just a bunch of gobbledygook because the IMF is just a bunch of socialist, communists, world government, New World Order nutcases. But she couches this in terms of the European Space Agency. Let's look and see how she brings that in here. Late last year, on November 12th, the little spacecraft operated by the European Space Agency made the first ever landing on a comet after a 10-year journey covering 500 million miles. Like millions of others, I was mesmerized by the sheer audacity of this adventure. The touchdown on the comet, called 67P, was part of the ongoing Rosetta mission, which is led by a multinational team of scientists. Together, these scientists have extended humanity's reach into the cosmos, and by doing so, they have enhanced our understanding of our own planet. Really? They embody the spirit of those 19th century scholars who used the original Rosetta Stone to decode the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. Now, that's just stupid. Why is this story relevant right now? Because this year the global economy will face what we might call 3 Rosetta moments. I'm not going to go into those. It's just a bunch of gobbledygook. Let's just go down to the conclusion here. Basically, it's that we all have to work together to have growth, which we can't seem to get. Conclusion. This brings me back to the beginning. While I was speaking, the Rosetta spacecraft has continued to circle the dark, icy object that is Comet 67P. As the comet proceeds closer to the sun, we may yet learn more of its secrets. Given the diversity of its staff and backers, the Rosetta mission is a true testament to global cooperation. Keep that in mind. That's why she's citing it. Policymakers should take inspiration from that. There are no secrets about what can engender growth. But if they are to deliver on the 3 Rosetta moments, they need to enhance global cooperation. They need to embrace what I have called the new multilateralism. This is the year when it should be put into practice. The new multilateralism also requires institutions that are efficient, credible, and representative of changing global economy. This is why the international community agreed to reform the IMF to increase the representation of emerging market countries. The 2010 quota and governance reforms would also help sustain the fund's financial firepower to meet the challenges ahead. The IMF's membership had called on the United States to ratify the 2010 reforms by the end of last year, which did not happen. As I have spoken much about leadership today, I cannot but express my profound disappointment in the political powers who have so far failed to grasp the benefits of the reform both for their own country and for the world at large. We have seen better from the United States over the last 70 years. We will now be working on interim solutions to address some of the concerns of our other 187 member countries. But let me be clear, given the challenges that 2015 and the following years will bring, there's no alternative to completing the 2010 reforms, and we continue to call on Congress to approve them without delay. I would like to end with a quote that encapsulates blah, 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 blah. So that's the mind control, New World Order nonsense coming out of Christine Lagarde and the IMF. Now, what is this thing, this Rosetta Stone space capsule? Let's take a look first at the European Space Agency and their little explanation here. We'll let that play first.
In July 2011, Rosetta entered into deep space hibernation, which ended when its internal alarm clock went off on January 2014. After waking, the 11 scientific instruments on Rosetta and 10 on the small lander called Philae were turned on and checked. Then began the most difficult phase of the mission, the rendezvous with the comet. As it closed in on the comet, a major braking maneuver was performed to bring Rosetta alongside around the nucleus at walking pace, becoming the first spacecraft ever to do so. Since then, Rosetta has been mapping the nucleus in detail in order to select the landing site for Philae. This will be the first time that landing on a comet has ever been attempted. Comet 67P, or Churyumov-Gerasimenko, is a tiny world. Its nucleus of ice, rock, and dust is just 4 kilometers across. Its low mass means that it has a weak gravitational field, making landing on its surface very challenging. Philae will have to use ice screws and harpoons to prevent it from rebounding back into space after touchdown. A successful landing will depend on what kind of surface Philae lands on, whether it consists of dust or even ice. In this demonstration, we're going to focus on the deployment of Philae onto the comet. The microgravity environment of the space station makes it an ideal place to try out this experiment. All the same, for this to work, we're going to need to use a little imagination. We're going to use an unpowered sphere satellite to represent the nucleus of the comet, which, in reality, is a dirty snowball approximately 4 kilometers across.
So I'm not going to waste your time with the rest of this. This is the guy on the International Fake Station throwing a little piece of rubber at the spinning top thing with some Velcro on it to try to demonstrate this incredible landing. So before we examine that, let's take a look at what is some of the symbolism here with this Philae and this Rosetta Stone, and what is all this stuff, and how does this involve Isis and Osiris? Well, it actually does, believe it or not. Philae means trade. There's an intriguing name game behind all the interstellar news you're seeing on television and reading about in the media. Let me save you the trouble and go through these language links systematically. Philae is a robotic European Space Agency lander that accompanied the Rosetta spacecraft until its designed landing on Comet 67P, etc., over 10 years after departing Earth. So let's go and look. Here's the obelisk. This is the Philae obelisk. It was one of 2 obelisks found at Philae in Upper Egypt in 1815 and soon afterwards acquired by William John Banks. He noted 2 inscriptions on it. One was in Egyptian hieroglyphs, the other in ancient Greek. By comparing the two texts, although they were not translations of one another, Banks believed that he recognized the names Ptolemy and Cleopatra in hieroglyphic characters. This identification was afterwards confirmed by Thomas Young. So this is how we get the Rosetta Stone translation, the breaking of that the Egyptian hieroglyphs. That's a very famous moment. So what is the source of the name Philae? And its direct link to Isis, the Egyptian deity, which is mirrored in the name of modern Mideastern organization known for its terror, beheadings, and more. Philae, being accounted one of the burying places of Osiris, was held in high reverence both by the Egyptians to the north and the Nubians to the south. It was deemed profane for any but priests to dwell there, and accordingly sequestered and denominated the unapproachable. It was reported, too, that neither birds flew over it nor fish approached its shores. Interesting. These indeed were the traditions of a remote period, since in the time of the Ptolemies of Egypt, Philae was so much resorted to, partly by pilgrims to the tomb of Osiris, partly by persons on secular errands, that the priests petitioned Ptolemy Phison to prohibit public functionaries, at least, from coming there and living at their expense. So you can see that it's all involved with the Rosetta Stone and Egyptian mythology and Isis, Osiris, Philae, obelisks. Interesting stuff. So did this thing really happen? No, I don't believe it did. I think it was a hoax. Now, let me go to a New York Times. This is a story from JPL. You can see jpl.nasa.gov. I don't have time to go into the history of JPL, and its occultic origins, and Jack Parsons and all the rest of that, but you can research that for yourself. So here's an article from JPL, but I wanted to look at an article from the New York Times, and this is interesting because there's a little comment here I wanted you to see. Here's another one with all these pictures of what, who knows what these are. But let's look at this slideshow here, and that's kind of interesting. Let's look at this second photo and the caption. It says, October 28th, the comet's neck seen from 5 miles above the surface. Rubble appears to have fallen from some of the overhanging ledges, and small cracks visible on some of the ledges at center left might lead to future landslides. Really? Remember he told you that it was a microgravity environment and that the thing is 4 kilometers wide? Is there really enough gravity there to have landslides? Does anybody really believe that? That's just stupid. That doesn't even make any sense according to any known understanding of how gravity works. But let's look at this Rosetta Comet landing hoax. 10 reasons why the Rosetta Comet landing was a hoax. Basel, Switzerland. When the European Space Agency allegedly landed Philae spacecraft on the Churyumov, I can't pronounce it, comet, which is reportedly traveling 84,000 miles per hour, you may have been thinking, wait, what? Really? Are you serious? If so, you weren't alone. Aside from the fact that the comet landing was straight out of the Hollywood movie Armageddon, starring Bruce Willis and Ben Affleck, there are far too many anomalies surrounding the historic event not to scientifically reevaluate exactly what us Earthlings are being asked to believe. After all, neither NASA or the ESA has put a man on the relatively stationary moon since 1972. No, they faked that too. Allegedly. And it's only 249,000 miles away from Earth. Conversely, 67P Comet is some 310 million miles away from Earth and moving at 23.6 miles per second. Therefore, the likelihood that a 10-year-old spacecraft landed on the comet first try around is highly improbable, to say the least, considering that landing on a flying space rock had never been executed, let alone attempted in the history of mankind. The ESA either had a severe case of beginner's luck or the incident was an elaborate hoax After reading the evidence depicted herein, chances you will agree with the latter. Number one, no video footage. According to Rosetta's Wikipedia page, information gathered by Rosetta's onboard cameras beginning at a distance of 24 million kilometers were processed at ESA's Operations Center to refine the position of the comet in its orbit to a few kilometers. However, to date, no live footage of the comet landing has ever been produced. Instead, the EAS released a 7-minute video which contains a lot of computer models, speeches, and scientific cheerleading, but no actual footage of the event. Since Rosetta and Philae are state-of-the-art spacecraft, the lack of video footage is highly suspect and suggests the ESA has something to hide. No real-time communication. Philae's alleged landing on 67P comet was reportedly executed from ESA mission control at ESOC in Darmstadt, Germany. Considering that the comet in question is approximately 310 million miles away from Earth, any real-time communication with Philae in respect to its navigation and precision landing on the comet, which is traveling at 84,000 miles per hour, would have to occur faster than the speed of light. Even if ESA was able to accomplish with Rosetta and Philae at the speed of light, there would be approximately 25 to 27 minute lag between operational maneuvers emanating from Germany and real-time maneuvers in deep space. In short, it is an impossible feat. For lack of a better analogy, it would be like driving a race car at 84,000 miles per hour with a 25-minute delay in respect to the road ahead. Needless to say, a fiery crash would be in short order. 3. No aerodynamic shape. Considering real comets such as Halley's Comet are flying through space at an extremely high rate of speed, they tend to become rather aerodynamic over time due to the cosmic dust and cosmic rays they encounter while careening through space. This is clearly not the case with 67P Comet, which exhibits rather odd boot or lion-like shape. In short, the comet is very uncomet-like, which suggests its entire likeness was fabricated, most likely a form of Photoshop. No stars, of course, no stars, there are never any stars. No fiery glow, no vapor trail, no space sheer suspicious names. The Rosetta space probe and Philae lander spacecraft were allegedly launched by the ESA on March 2nd, 2004 by Ariane 5 rocket, reaching the 67P comet on August 6, 2014. Whether this event occurred in reality is not known, but the name Rosetta was evidently chosen because of its likeness to Rosetta Stone, an international language-based software company. Because the name Rosetta automatically invokes Rosetta Stone, it makes the notion of the Rosetta spacecraft landing on a flying stone in space seem all the more plausible, considering that PH often constitutes an F sound in the English language. The name Philae can also equate to file or fool, as vowels in the English are ambiguous at best. Considering that the comet landing appears to be a hoax, the name of its primary spacecraft was appropriately named Fool, for billions have succumbed to its fakery. So there's a decent debunking of this thing. No, I don't believe that this really happened. It just doesn't make any sense. So what are these Rosetta moments? What is Christine Lagarde talking about? Well, the IMF's ability to fix international economies is about as much of a hoax as this Philae and Rosetta Stone spacecrafts. They don't have the ability to fix anything. The only thing they could do is just abolish themselves, and perhaps if we had some form of international trade based on an honest system, I don't know what that would be, whether it would be a gold and silver standard or some type of honest international trading system. Obviously, economies would recover very quickly. But that's not what Christine Lagarde's calling for. She's calling for more work on climate change, more work on feminism, more socialism, more communism, more power for the BIS, more power for the IMF, and of course less power for the United States. So once again, we have a hoax being perpetrated by the IMF. We also have a hoax being perpetrated by the ESA, and we'll talk to you next time.